Theme: Life of the Iroquois. Long before skyscrapers rose over Manhattan or highways stretched across upstate New York, the land was thick with forests, rivers, and lakes. In these woodlands lived the Hodenosoni, the people of the Longhouse. You may know them as the Iroquois, a name given later by outsiders. But they call themselves Hodenosoni, and their story is one of community, democracy, resilience, and deep connection to the natural world. To step into their world is to enter a society where every tree, every stream, every animal has meaning, where families extend far beyond a single household, and where decisions are made not just for today, but for generations to come. The Iroquois lived in what is now New York State, parts of Pennsylvania, Ontario, and Quebec. Their homeland was the rich woodlands of the Northeast, a place of 4 distinct seasons, fertile soil, flowing rivers, and vast forests of maple, oak, and pine. The environment shaped every part of their lives. The rivers provided fish and routes for travel. The forests offered deer, bear, and wild plants. And the land itself was fertile enough to grow crops that sustained entire villages. But this was not simply a backdrop, it was home. The Iroquois saw themselves as part of this living world, bound by responsibility to care for it. Before Europeans ever arrived, the Iroquois had formed one of the most remarkable political systems in history, the Hodenosoni Confederacy. It began when 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, ended years of conflict and joined in peace. Later, the Tuscarora became the 6th nation. Guided by the peacemaker and the great orator Hiawatha, they created the Great Law of Peace. This law established a council where chiefs from each nation gathered to make decisions for the whole. Clan mothers, respected elder women, had the power to choose and remove these chiefs. This was not a kingdom, nor a dictatorship. It was a participatory democracy, centuries before the United States was founded. Many historians believe the Iroquois Confederacy influenced the framers of the U.S. Constitution. At the heart of Iroquois life was the longhouse. These massive wooden structures, sometimes over 200 feet long, were built from poles covered with bark. Inside, multiple families of the same clan lived together, each with its own fire but sharing the same roof. The longhouse was more than a building, it was a symbol of unity. Just as families lived together under one roof, the nations of the Confederacy lived together in peace. Clans were central to identity. A person belonged to the clan of their mother, beaver, bear, turtle, wolf, deer, or heron, among others. These clans crossed national boundaries, creating ties of kinship across the Confederacy. The Iroquois were farmers as well as hunters. At the center of their diet were the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash. These crops were not only food, they were seen as gifts from the Creator, sisters who supported each other. Corn grew tall, beans climbed its stalks, and squash spread along the ground, keeping weeds down and moisture in. Women tended these fields, ensuring that villages had a steady food supply. Men hunted deer, bear, and turkey, and fished the rivers. Together, they created a balanced way of life where the land provided and the people gave thanks. An Iroquois village was surrounded by a palisade of wooden stakes for protection. Inside, longhouses lined central pathways. Smoke rose from fires, carrying the scent of cornmeal and venison stew. Children played games that taught them hunting skills and teamwork. Women worked in the fields, cooked meals, and crafted pottery and clothing from deerskin. Men returned from hunting trips or sat crafting weapons and tools. Elders told stories, passing wisdom from one generation to the next. Life was communal, cooperative, and tied to the rhythms of nature. The Iroquois believed the world was filled with spirit. Every plant, animal, and natural force carried life energy. Ceremonies marked planting and harvest, births and deaths, victories and healing. The Great Spirit was the creator, but daily life was guided by countless spiritual beings. Dreams were seen as messages, and balance with the natural world was considered essential for health and survival. Festivals, filled with song, dance, and thanksgiving, reminded the people of their bond with the land and the Creator. This is the world of the Iroquois, a confederacy of nations bound by peace, families living together in longhouses, women guiding community life, farmers tending the three sisters, and hunters providing from the forests and rivers. It was a society built on balance, between men and women, between humans and nature, between individual and community. In the next part, we will step deeper into their traditions, exploring their ceremonies, the role of clan mothers and chiefs, their art and warfare, and how they engaged with neighboring peoples. Part 2. The Iroquois, or Hodenosoni, were not only farmers, hunters, and builders of longhouses. They were also keepers of ceremony, guardians of balance, and masters of diplomacy. Their society wove together spirituality, politics, and daily life in a way that bound the people to one another and to the world around them. To understand the heart of Iroquois life, we must step into their ceremonial cycles, councils, and traditions, where every dance, every song, every political decision was tied to something larger than the individual. The Hodenosoni followed a ceremonial calendar linked to the cycles of nature. Each season brought new celebrations that expressed gratitude and sought harmony with the forces of the earth. Midwinter Festival, the most important of all, held in the cold of January or February. It was a time of renewal, dreams, and thanksgiving, lasting several days of dances, speeches, and rituals. Maple Festival, marking the return of spring, when the maple tree's sap began to flow. Planting Festival, celebrating the sowing of corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters. Strawberry Festival, giving thanks for the first fruits of the season. Green Corn and Harvest Festivals, honoring the ripening and gathering of crops, with songs, dances, and feasts of thanksgiving. These ceremonies weren't just rituals, they were moments when the community came together to reaffirm its unity with nature, ancestors, and the Creator. In Iroquois society, women held remarkable influence. The Hodenosoni were matrilineal, meaning that family lines and property passed through the mother. At the center stood the clan mothers, elder women who guided their families and held political authority. Clan mothers chose the male chiefs, or sachems, who represented their clans in the Grand Council. If a chief failed in his duties, the clan mother could remove him. This balance of power ensured that leadership was not about domination but responsibility. Men led in councils and warfare, but women held the keys to continuity and justice. It was a society where women's voices were not silenced, they were essential. The Grand Council of the Iroquois Confederacy was one of the most sophisticated political systems in the pre-Columbian world. 50 chiefs, chosen by the clan mothers of each nation, gathered at Onondaga, the central fire. There, decisions were made by consensus, not by force or majority. Every nation had a voice. The council debated issues of war, peace, trade, and diplomacy. Leaders listened, considered, and sought agreement. Only when all were in harmony was a decision declared. This practice of deliberation and balance impressed European observers. Centuries later, thinkers like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson would look to the Iroquois as a model for building American democracy. Though peace reigned within the Confederacy, the Iroquois were also fierce warriors. War was often fought not for conquest of land, but for revenge, prestige, or the taking of captives. Captives could be adopted into Iroquois families, replacing lost loved ones, or used in rituals that reaffirmed community strength. Warriors trained from youth, running long distances, learning stealth in the forests, and mastering the bow, war club, and later, firearms. One of the most famous conflicts was the Beaver Wars of the 1600s, when the Iroquois fought neighboring tribes to control the fur trade with Europeans. Their skill, discipline, and unity made them a force feared across the region. The Iroquois were not only warriors, they were diplomats. Their confederacy structure made them skilled negotiators with neighboring tribes and, later, with European powers. They played a central role in the balance of power between the French, British, and Dutch during the colonial era. Both feared and respected, the Iroquois were often courted as allies, their support tipping the scales of conflict. Their ability to navigate these shifting alliances was rooted in centuries of experience with intertribal diplomacy. The same skills that had created peace among their own nations now served them in the wider world. Beyond politics and war, the Iroquois carried rich cultural traditions that gave life depth and meaning. Storytelling was a sacred duty. Elders told tales of the great peacemaker, of Sky Woman who created the earth on the turtle's back, and of heroes and tricksters who shaped the world. Games also held spiritual power. The Iroquois are often credited with the creation of lacrosse, called the Creator's Game. It was played not just for sport but for healing, prayer, and community bonding. Matches could last for days, with hundreds of players on vast fields. Art and crafts flourished in beadwork, wampum belts, and carvings. Wampum belts, made of shell beads, were not money but sacred records, used to mark treaties, stories, and agreements. What held Iroquois society together was a deep commitment to balance. Balance between men and women, with shared power and respect. Balance between humans and nature, taking only what was needed and giving thanks. Balance between nations, seeking consensus rather than conflict. This philosophy was woven into every decision, every ceremony, every story. As we leave this second chapter of the Iroquois story, we see a people who combine strength with wisdom, warfare with diplomacy, spirituality with practicality. Their ceremonies bound them to the land. Their clan mothers safeguarded justice. Their councils created one of the world's earliest democracies. In the final part of our journey, we will explore how the Iroquois faced the greatest challenge of all, the arrival of Europeans, the struggle for survival in a changing world, and the ways their traditions continue to live on today. Part 3. For centuries, the Iroquois had lived in balance with their land, guided by the great law of peace. But in the 1500s and 1600s, their world was shaken by forces unlike any they had ever known. Sailing ships appeared on the Atlantic coast, carrying Europeans, Dutch, French, and English. They brought new goods, new weapons, new faiths, and new diseases. The Hodenosoni now faced a choice that would test their unity and reshape their future: adapt, resist, or perish. The first Europeans the Iroquois encountered were Dutch traders along the Hudson River. They brought metal tools, cloth, guns, and kettles, items that quickly became valuable. The Iroquois offered furs, especially beaver pelts, in return. Beaver fur was in high demand in Europe for hats, and the forests of the Northeast were rich with them. This trade transformed life. Guns gave Iroquois warriors an advantage over rivals, but dependence on European goods also pulled them into the dangerous web of colonial rivalries. By the mid-1600s, the Iroquois entered a series of fierce conflicts known as the Beaver Wars. Their goal was to control the fur trade and expand hunting grounds. Armed with European weapons, they fought against the Huron, Erie, and other neighboring nations. Villages were destroyed, alliances shifted, and entire peoples were displaced. The Iroquois emerged as powerful, feared across the Northeast. But the wars also brought deep scars, loss of life, upheaval, and growing dependence on trade with foreigners. Even more devastating than war was disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through Iroquois villages, brought by Europeans. These illnesses killed thousands, wiping out families, elders, and leaders. Entire villages were abandoned. For a people whose strength rested on community and kinship, the losses were immeasurable. As European empires fought for control of North America, the Iroquois found themselves caught between them. The French in Canada allied with the Huron and Algonquin. The English and Dutch courted the Iroquois. Rather than becoming pawns, the Hodenosoni used diplomacy to their advantage. They played one power against the other, extracting trade and respect. Their ability to negotiate, forged in centuries of internal consensus, now served them in the colonial arena. During the American Revolution, however, the Confederacy faced its greatest test. Some nations sided with the British, others with the Americans. The unity of the Confederacy cracked under the strain of foreign wars. After the Revolution, the new United States expanded rapidly into Iroquois territory. Treaties, often broken, stripped the Haudenosaunee of millions of acres. Villages were burned, farmland seized, and communities pushed to smaller reservations. Missionaries and government officials tried to erase their traditions, pushing Christianity and English schools. Children were sent to boarding schools where they were forbidden to speak their language. Yet even in this dark period, the spirit of the Haudenosaunee endured. Despite loss of land and attempts at assimilation, the Iroquois found ways to keep their traditions alive. Ceremonies continued in secret. The stories of Sky Woman, Hiawatha, and the Peacemaker were still told around fires. Lacrosse was still played, songs still sung, wampum belts still treasured. Some leaders, like Handsome Lake, a Seneca prophet, preached a revival of Iroquois traditions blended with new teachings. His visions helped renew cultural pride at a time when it seemed nearly lost. Today, the Haudenosaunee remain a vibrant people. Communities in New York, Ontario, and Quebec still practice their ceremonies, govern themselves by traditional councils, and teach their languages to new generations. The Iroquois are also internationally recognized for their sovereignty. Their representatives carry passports of the Hodenosoni Confederacy, asserting their identity as a living nation. They are guardians of tradition but also participants in the modern world. Iroquois athletes compete in international lacrosse under their own flag. Artists, storytellers, and activists share their voices on a global stage. At the heart of Iroquois life, then and now, is the great law of peace. It teaches unity, balance, and responsibility to future generations. The image of the longhouse still symbolizes the Confederacy, many families under one roof, each with its fire, but all sharing the same structure. The values of consensus, respect for women, reverence for nature, and vision for the seventh generation remain guiding principles. So the story of the Iroquois is not just about the past. It is about endurance. From their ancient villages in the forests of New York to the councils at Onondaga, from the Beaver Wars to the American Revolution, from broken treaties to cultural revival, the Haudenosaunee have endured. They remain the people of the Longhouse, proud, resilient, and unbroken. Their traditions remind us that democracy can be ancient, that balance with the land is possible, and that true strength lies not in domination, but in unity and peace. Thank you for traveling with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support is important to us.